Hi, good morning. I am George van Dieman, and I was the past secretary, or the last secretary of the Premier, Mr. Gerald Morkel, and for a short period, secretary of the Mayor's office after my retirement. So I am from Wynberg. I played my sports in Wynberg, grew up in Wynberg, attended school in Wynberg, and I feel a bit disappointed in certain aspects of Wynberg. And what is a bit bad to me is, if we all know Wynberg has no council houses as such, but we have people that has moved in behind the sports field and the old Bonnie Town. Now, if Wynberg was properly had a proper infrastructure years ago, when I was young, things would have been a bit better, especially after the war, and we had Youngsfield as a massive piece of property that could have been utilized for the purpose of for the township, but that hasn't happened. And what has happened now, we find a lot of people living without identity or whatever in Wynberg. What has also struck me badly was when they built fairways, the affluent people, mostly teachers, etc., and state employees, they all moved to fairways. And in doing so, Wynberg completely changed from the Wynberg that I knew. When I was young, the lower Wynberg, where Ottery Road is now, and Rosemead Avenue was Prince George Drive, as such as we had no M5. So we had the colored people and Muslim people, and we had some whites, because we had Marcus, who was a popular guy with his penny polonies, and then we had Stein, who was also popular. They were both on one was on the corner of York and Ottery Road, and the other one was on the corner of Sussex and York Roads, and they were very, very important to the community. We then had people living, whites and coloureds, living up in Ottery Road and in the side streets up to Wynberg Station. So they lived a wonderful life. That's why we had a school called John Graham. But people may not even know that before the school was ever used as a school, it was a hospital. That is some good news, or surprise news to people. But then, at a certain time, when the whites started to move out, the school was taken over by the coloureds, and instead of having a primary school, it became a high school with very, very little space for any mural activities. So John Graham went to Plumstead, and now they are the feeder school for Plumstead High. But I don't want to go there. I want to stay at Wynberg. And I feel that the space between Ottery Road, where William Herbert is, up to, call it the race course, there were no houses really, and that could have been better utilized also. We had a cemetery that was, exhumed the bodies, and they built a garage on the perimeter corner of Wetton Road and Rosemead Avenue. And so we find that Wynberg has enough space, but the space that's wasted space at this point in time is Youngsfield. If Youngsfield can be used, to be used better, then my suggestion is that they build some townships, town houses there, or whatever, that could accommodate those people that's in those shanties there at the back of Bonnie Town. And that would be a wonderful gesture if somebody can speak to the government who owns the land, and it can be utilized for a wonderful purpose. Wynberg as such, when we were young, William Herbert was very popular, the soccer field. They got a 99-year lease. But as the years went on, these soccer players had their own home ground, which meant that the facilities became too big at Wynberg, and as such, there's still barren land there because it's not properly used, especially if we have the Minister of Sports that can look into it and perhaps come up with a better solution. It could also be utilized for something else. And I feel that all that space between Otter Road and the fire station can be relooked and make certain that something better is put there if the planning department can assist the Minister of Sport in such a way. I want to say that when I was young, we only had one policeman on a cycle, and the people were all wonderful people. Everybody, they lived their own lives, but it was a good community. Whoever they were, I don't like to use the term political, but I can only recall one black person living in Wynberg, and it was during that period when he lived in Wynberg, we had a shortage of soap. There was no soap available, and this man, he was the person who made soap, and he was near Wynberg station, and I just recall the little lane up there, Wynberg. So those were some of the very, very important things that I feel that if one policeman can control the whole of Lower Wynberg, it shows you how the world has changed and the whole of the Western Cape, etc. has changed. I do want to say that I was chairman of the Wynberg, of Witteboom High School, chairman of the SGB, and I was also the chairman of the Wynberg Secondary School SGB. And as I am George van Dieman, the great-grandson of Tamarta Gray, who was the first person that I know that married Harry Gray in South Africa. And she donated many properties, and also to the Bedford Training College she has given that to them. But I would like to come back to Wynberg Senior, where I was chairman, and my great-granny owned the property. And on the 23rd of August 2022, I asked for the principal for an interview. And as we're sitting here on the 12th of the 4th, 2023, he has not given me 1 minute to spend with him, and that is the principal, and I was the chairman of the very first SGB, and having my great-granny owning the property before the school was ever thought of. The name of a house on the property was Greylands, and I honestly thought that was an appropriate name to give to the school. I wanted to discuss that with the principal. I loaned him my book on Martha, but he hasn't even responded in any way or ever given me the opportunity to have an interview with him. So those are the sad notes, but the good ones are that we enjoyed our youth in Wynberg, And if I can relive those wonderful years, it was precious to me and to the many, many people. I have a cousin who is Leslie van Dieman, still alive, living in Wynberg, and if I can recall, he is the only living person in the Western Cape, could be in the whole of South Africa, who has played for the South African coloured soccer team against the Bantus and the Indians in 1958. So I don't know if there's anything else that we want to know, but I am very, very disturbed that Wynberg is not the Wynberg that I knew. I can also speak of Broad Road, where we had a school called Broad Road Primary, and it was also a so-called white school, and then some light coloured mother took her child and she was accepted there, and then a little while later the father went to get his child in, the same sister, the sibling. He couldn't get the child in because of the colour of the child, and for that reason he had an argument, and the school just changed. They had the affluent coloured attending, but it became from a white school to a coloured school. And eventually, when Coloured Affairs opened their doors in the 60s, they utilized that as the offices, the Western Cape office, and the school had to move to York Road. I think that's in Lansdowne. So I also served on the school, shall I say, the school board, yes. But I don't know if there's anything else that you want. Having spoken about the book of Aunt Martha, there is also another book yet which Dr. or Professor van der Ros, Richard van der Ros, wrote, and that is called The Black Duchess. He wrote that book, and he asked me for some of the to assist him with inputs, which I have done. So that book is also on the market, and both those books are very interesting to read. And for some reason or another, Professor van der Ros gave me a copy of Harry Gray's will, which I am still in possession of. But coming back to Wynberg, I didn't see the necessity for the Bonnytown to have been built there, because we had a School of Industry, which is down in Plantation Road. We had another place for safety, which is Mountain View, which was in Steenberg in Military Road. And then we had the Porter Reformatory, which was in Tukai. So those places, apart from those places that's distance out of the Western Cape, I did not see the necessity to have something there at Wynberg where they could have utilized the space much, much better. But Wynberg has become very compact, especially if you look at Wynberg, Ottery Road and Wynberg meeting at Broad Road where the Wynberg station is. It is so congested there with taxis and children, because we have the two high schools that call it the so-called coloured high schools situated in Ottery Road. And the children, we don't have sufficient children attending those schools. So those children are must come by bus or some transport to get them to those schools. And that is also another problem which is causing the school's quintile system to be affected. and schools are getting less because they in Weinberg, and everybody thinks that the children attending the school are from Weinberg, which is not so. They can go and do a research, and you'll find that there's only a handful of children that's high school that will be able to attend those schools. And then we have, at this moment in time, most of those people, they have come to go to Model C schools because they're all open. And I would take on any person to go and do a research on just the Weinberg, the children, their ages and where they go to school. We have Methodist Primary School, which is here for years. Palmerston has closed down. The Muhammadiyah is still there. And then we have the Urdu School, which is in Douglas Road, at the bottom end of Douglas Road. You may not know, Douglas Road used to run right through to South Road, but they then blocked it there because they built a school. And when they built a school, on the other side of the school fence, it continues. But what was very, very exciting, or what was to me something that I always admired, practically on every corner we had a bubby shop. And those bubbies, all of them made money. And they were all there to help one another. But as the years went by, all those bubby shops, you can go and check them out. There could be one or two. The only place that has really, that's still effective, is Park Road, Bats Road corner. I don't know. There you'll still see some movement with shops like the Kismet and etc. But otherwise, if you look at Weinberg, they're totally out of shops there. Most of the shops has been converted into houses, and we had a little bazaar called Pakistan Bazaar. It was one of the most, shall I say, business-orientated places there in York Road, on the corner of York Road and Bats Road. That has also gone, and nothing is there now. I don't know. Weinberg is not the Weinberg of old. When we had those people, I suppose life was much better. But there was a time when we also had a problem with the war, and there were certain things that wasn't on the market. And we had to, as children, go and queue on Bats, the Bats' ground in Bats Road, and stand in a queue there. The army truck would come with the supplies, and when we had to queue there already at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and keep a place for one of our elders to get there so that we could get to school. So those were the hard times of Weinberg, when money was there, but there was nothing that you can really get for your money, because it was the time of I couldn't get to the word. But yes, it was tough those days. But otherwise, the people may not even know about the laundry that they had in Bats Road, which was very famous, and in Park Road, just past the Kismet, there was never a Kismet. There were houses there all. Those were just houses, and they broke down the houses to build this massive thing called the Kismet. And if I'm not mistaken, it looks now like a dead duck also standing there. But we had the Columbia laundry also in Park Road, near to Castletown Road, and most of the people, the women especially, of Weinberg, they were all working at those places, and it was quite exciting. And then we can come back to Broad Road, where we have the council yard there for the pick up, get the dirt. And those days they had horse and cart getting into the various parts not only of Wynberg, but wherever they had to pick up. You had a guy that swept the side street of the road, and the others had to collect the dirt. But there were no trolleys that they had those days. It was, they had to put those things on a bag, a plastic bag, and put it behind their back and get it to their trucks. And those were really hard days for those people that worked there. And I can also tell you that my father was also one of those guys that had to do that job. And when winter came, it was just terrible. But life was life, and to survive, you had to be able to do these things. But eventually, we got into, as the years went by, and the different revolutions, we're into the fourth revolution now, they has changed, and they have now got lorries, and it has, the concept there of collecting the dirt is now so much better for all the people.